if I can make it. Hey, welcome. Get spooled.
We are
Tampa Fishing Outfitters.
That
We're here.
happened fast.
Yeah.
That happened fast. Myself, Captain Travis in the studio, Captain James, Captain. Is that Rick?
That's Rick.
It's Rick.
That's
He's
Rick.
back
Man,
from
he's
Georgia.
back.
Wah, wah.
And we are here live for another hour of Fish Talk Tampa Bay.
Heck yeah.
So
It's finally cooling down a little bit.
get your popcorn. Get
Feel
your
that
Bud
this
Lights.
morning?
I did, man.
Yeah, that was nice.
I
Actually,
did.
it was the whole weekend, kind of a little bit of a shock. I haven't been wearing bibs to catch bait or anything. And Saturday morning, I was like, man, I got to start bringing those suckers out again.
Yeah, for sure. It's been nice, man. I've seen a little dip in water temperature too, but that little cool breeze in the evening and in the morning has definitely been nice. Although in the middle of the day,
It's just as hot as it ever
it's
was.
just as hot, buddy. It's
But when
cooking,
you start with
but
a head start of water temp, where if it's 4 degrees cooler than it normally
What is
is,
water temp
100%.
I was seeing a lot of like 81 in the mornings,
80s is where I've been seeing a lot of the stuff.
84, 85 in the afternoon.
Well, I've been gone for 10 days. I got back
Did
this
ya?
afternoon, so I don't know. I got no fishing report. Don't know what the water temp is.
Oh, so you're just here to
Rick,
get our report so you can
Rick's
get
looking
out
to
there.
get fishing report.
All
yeah.
right.
And but I come in to get it live.
Okay, good.
I could have stayed at home and watched.
could have stayed at
but
home and watched.
I wanted the live version.
All right. Well, ask
Better
away,
live.
dude. Ask away.
How's fishing?
Fishing's been good. Travis and I actually fished quite a bit. We had a couple days off in the middle of the week, so we got out and just running around looking for redfish schools, and it was as good as you can imagine it could be. We went out and filmed with the store film crew on Wednesday, and a little more difficult when you add in the elements of having the camera people there and 2 boats.
Right.
And, we're the ones trying to fish, drive the boat, keep them close together. So there was definitely some challenges, but found some fish, and we're definitely excited about getting some of that footage out there. But yeah, I would say, last week's episode we talked about redfish, and
I watched.
so much of, yeah, that's right, you were commenting on that. So much of what we were talking about came into play, whether it was the dead bait, the live bait that we were talking about, those tips, artificial use. Really cool to do that. Through the weekend, I know you had the foot race, the 5K over the weekend.
We did, man, which, I wanted to talk about that for a minute. That was something really cool. I've never really done anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily consider myself to be like a marathon runner or anything, or any kind of triathlete or whatever those are. But I tell you, it was something that for me and the family we wanted to go do. We don't get a lot of family time, especially off the water. Seems like most of the time when we're going to do a family day, we jump on the boat and do some fishing. So it was nice to get out and as a family kind of get out and support a good cause.
Right.
I ended up running the 5K, which was cool. It was for ovarian cancer.
Okay.
And kind of their tagline is one step closer. So they do these races and they host several events throughout the year to raise money for ovarian cancer, which is, from what I learned, is a cancer that normally isn't detected until it's somewhat not necessarily too late, but late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so this particular organization, which is the Selma Mastery Ovarian Foundation, Ovarian Cancer Foundation, they're working towards getting new testing in place and possibly some new medicines and treatment plans and things like that for this particular cancer. So it was really a good experience. Like I said, we got out, did a little run, had a nice time meeting some cool folks.
Mm-hmm.
Just all around a nice. Believe it was a nicer day to be out there running a 5K than it was to be out there catching bait and trying to catch fish. So for that, I'm blessed and thankful.
Yeah.
I made it through the end, man.
Yeah.
I think my time was like 27 minutes, something like that.
Nice,
So
dude. That's
not-
better than what you wanted.
no, it wasn't 32. I was 27. I want to say it was like 27:15 or something like that.
Cool.
So my first mile, I got out and stroked it. I had to get out in front of the game. Mile 3.
6-minute
Kevin-
mile, 9-minute mile, 12-minute
Yeah,
mile.
Kevin came by me. Kevin Carlin actually beat me, and all I cared about was getting in front of Kevin, right? That's all I had to do. And the last mile, he goes, "Man, you're wobbling." And he came by and he slapped me in the butt and he beat me by like 10 seconds or so.
Oh, dude.
And I was, man, my legs got heavy and I was like, it's right there. But it was a good time. I enjoyed getting out there and doing that run. It was a beautiful run. Anybody that likes to run, I suggest you maybe get involved with that next year. It was at the Albert Whitted Airport over in St. Pete.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a run right there down actually, I don't know what the First Avenue or whatever, that beach road or whatever that runs right there in front of the two marinas. It was a nice course. They had a 5K, a 10K, and then a 1 mile cookie run is what they called it. So you ran down a half a mile, got a cookie, and you came back. So they got everything for all ages, a serious runner, and these two guys are probably cookie runners. So maybe next year we'll put a team together and we'll show up and represent.
Did you go through like Demon's Landing and all that there?
Yeah, you go through that, you do a big loop, and you come back. And then if you were a 5Ker, you peeled off and went to the finish line. If you were 10K, you just kept going.
Right.
And so you did another 5 and came back.
That
so
sucked if you missed that turn.
yeah. Yeah, you'd be a 5K real quick.
Yeah.
No, if you missed the turn.
Oh, you're hosed.
Yeah.
I'm here for a 5K, and
I paid attention to where the 5K needed to go. Let's just put it that way.
Not getting any
I
more.
wasn't
more than
hitting
you could chew.
the 5K was all I can handle, man. It was plenty, but it was a good time.
That's cool. Yeah, you're right. It was windy, so I'm sure it was a good day for running.
I was looking out there. The race started at 7:30, which was nice. Nice and cool. Had a real cool morning. By 8 o'clock, it was starting to warm up a little bit, and I'm looking out there at Whitecaps as we were doing like the little award ceremony, and I'm thinking, man, I'm glad I'm here. That was great, man. So
I fished Saturday for the Team Addo, that All Heroes Open, which was, wow, I mean, compared to, I think I did it last year, that just the turnout, it was like 80 boats or 80 captains, and I think there was even some, self-entered participants teams as well. And I realized how big it was when I pulled up to the ramp that morning. Normally at 6 o'clock in the morning, I can count the number of trailers on one hand, and they're usually all putting in with me. I had a long walk just to get to the ramp, and I was like, holy cow. Yeah. And, I mean, there's boats everywhere. And all I can think is this is going to be a great bait grind, knowing Prieto was going to be scooting across the bay and needed some bait help.
Right.
And another buddy of mine who's just had a surgery couldn't catch bait. So I was like kind of extending myself to I'm going to help him get his well full and then give Prieto the report so he knows if he needs to stop. But bait was by far the best part of the day.
Good.
Yeah, bait was the best part of the day. Perfect size. I mean, everything you could write up. Fishing was tough, especially in the morning. We had that northeast wind. I mean, it was probably 20 mile an hour in the morning. Got up to about 25 middle of the day, and it was just brutal. Got the boat stuck within the first 30 minutes of the event. Lost power steering. But just one of them days. But I had a good group. The power steering on the one thing I'll tell you is when you lose that electric hydraulic power steering on the Mercury.
Don't turn so easy.
Oh my God!
So it's funny. So for a year before I put my tower on, I had just regular hydraulic C-Star steering. And I never really, you kind of get used to something, so you don't really know what the other side of the game is. And I've ran several Verados with the power steering on it. Man, when I rigged my tower, I put that power steering pump on. My shoulder thanks me every trip. I mean, it is
I love it.
Such a difference.
But, I took it over to West Coast Marine, and Justin, those guys are going to get me squared away. Luckily, I got a couple of days off, so they'll have me back up and running. But the event was one where, it's like a species rodeo, so there's like 15 different species you can go after. Trying to get that tarpon, that would have sealed the deal first. I think we finished in 5th, which was still not bad. We got a nice surprise grouper in those conditions that I didn't think we'd be able to get, and that was a higher point fish on the list. Like, we got our normal red trout snook.
And it wasn't the size of the fish. It was just...
No, the size of the fish didn't matter. It was just rodeo in the species. A flounder or or anything like that would have put us over the top, and my guys were gung-ho all about it. They were... the crew that I had is the group from McDill that does all of your sporting event jump-ins from the parachute.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they just did the Bucks game. Yeah, they did the opening Bucks game, I think. They did when the Hurricanes, I think, opened with they were telling me a bunch of stuff they'd done,
That's kinda
yeah,
neat.
cool group, and they were just gung ho about it. I mean, when we got that grouper, I didn't, we're in this chop, like serious chop, trolling motor, blasting out of the water, and we're sitting at a good point total. We're like in 7th or 8th, and I'm like, guys, if we can somehow get a grouper, it'll vault us up, and then we can go pick off that tarp, and it'll be game over. When they got the grouper, it was like
Game on.
Yeah, it was like V-Day in Europe. Like, it was a crazy reaction. They started slamming beers, and they're like, let's go get this tarpon. And then you go to look at tarpon for an hour that don't eat. It kind of ended that way. But a good time and a great cause. Tons of veterans, tons of, hooah and Semper Fi and all that. Just you get that good feeling when you're.
This is that time of year, and it happens every year. I mean, I know one of our local kingpins, Mike Anderson's got several events this time of year. Captain Lori's got an event this time of year. I think she's got a couple different events this time of year. It's really kind of humbling this time of year when you get to fish all these charity events.
The drag
and it's that time of year where we start to get into the holidays. We start to get into Thanksgiving, and it really does put some reason behind fishing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really cool, especially being involved in some of these events. And so for those that are out there looking to get involved with something that's not just for fishing, look up some of these events. I know Hooked on Hope is one. We're getting into October, which will be breast cancer month. So there's several
pediatric
cancer. There's a lot of different things going on within the fishing community that's raising money for good causes. So keep your eyes and ears bent for that. We'll do our best to try to bring some of those dates to you.
Speaking of which, this weekend is Tighten the Drag, which is for spinal cord injuries, and I've been doing that one as a just participant for many years, and over the last 3 or 4 years as a guide. That one's really cool, and that's probably what I think is one of the most fun. It's not the biggest turnout. You're going to get 50 to 70 teams somewhere in there, but it's people you see every year. And what I do like about that one is the guided division might be 10 or 12 boats. The majority of that is.
So you got a shot.
I've got a shot. Did well last year. But what I like about it though is there's a lot of people entering themselves, and these are people who are paying the rate and going to do their thing and contributing to a good cause. It's a fun time.
Cool. Ta-ting.
All right, you take over. You're trying to do the show. Where are we going next?
Oh man, where are we going next? One of the things that we hadn't talked about a lot, we touch on it every year, and you talked about grouper, and it kind of flashed something in my mind. I've been doing some grouper trolling here lately, and a lot of these channels are starting to stack up. We haven't been catching a lot of big fish yet. I expect as the water temperature drops, we're going to start to see some of these bigger, gag groupers, not necessarily even moving in, but being caught. They're kind of stealthy critters. I think as you move into the winter months and the cooler temps, I think these fish will tend to get out and sort of, kind of look around a little bit more, sit outside of these ledges and things like that, and feed. And so looking forward to that. If you are looking to do some grouper trolling, there's a few things that I can kind of throw out there. We'll do some tips. 3 to 4 miles an hour has been the trolling speed. Anywhere from 20 to 35 feet has been the depth.
Yep.
And one of my favorite plugs, partial to the reason where you lose a lot of plugs inside Tampa Bay, but Mann's stretch 25s, they're about $20.
Yeah.
You're going to save about $10 over a higher end, plug, and they work just as good. I would say the two colors to focus on are going to be your chartreuse, which are bright yellow, and oranges.
Yep.
Anything in that mix has really seemed to be the ticket, and I say that from a trial and error type situation where I've got a pink one on one and a chartreuse on the other, and time after time after time, we get hammered on the chartreuse. I go to both chartreuse. We start doubling up. And so color will make a difference sometimes in trolling, especially for gag grouper.
Greg, I think on slack tide, that's probably going to be where I'd like to drop down some pinfish. You can still troll. It's still going to be effective, but I'd say that slack tide is going to give you an opportunity to do some of that live bait fishing a little bit easier than when the tide's moving at a good clip. But I think that the slack tide is going to be your best opportunity to do any type of grouper fishing because it's just going to have them a little more out and about, looking around.
The one for me, Greg, that I sort of fall back on is I look at the weather. The weather determines whether or not I'm going to be bottom fishing on the trolling motor or whether or not I'm going to be trolling. And a little bit more slop, I'm going to choose trolling. I know the tide's not moving, so under all that slop, we don't have a lot of movement, so those plugs are going to run true. If it's beautiful weather and you can sit up and get on the trolling motor and spot lock these areas, sometimes I'll choose to bottom fish for them. But if you want to catch a lot of fish, or if you want to catch more fish, sometimes you'll get it on the troll.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get more fish on the troll during that period because you cover a lot more water during the prime time of fishing.
Yep.
But if you get, some sloppy stuff, just hang it all up because it's not going to happen. To answer your question, on the stretch 25 or 30s, I like the 25s. Most of the areas that I troll in, I try to stay in that 25 to 30 feet. You can get a stretch 25 to run about 30 feet, especially if you're using braid.
Or send it back a little bit further.
Exactly. You just drop it back a little bit further. You can even put a planer on there if you want to. I don't use planers. I use about a 6-foot, 80-pound leader, fluorocarbon leader, tied to 60-pound braid on a tarpon rod.
Same.
An 8-foot tarpon rod with spinning gear.
Same.
I let it roll. I would suggest, unless you're using planers, to troll with braid, especially with these plugs. You're going to see a big difference on how you can let the line back less and get deeper with the braid than you can with that mono or fluorocarbon main line.
I know the man stretch that name gets thrown out there a lot. Two things so there's also the bomber, the certified depth, the CD 25. The nice thing about that one, if you go and refer back to the certified depth ones, they give you a chart on each plug.
Exactly how far
it tells you 50-pound mono, 50-pound braid, or going up in pound test, how far it needs to be back to achieve whatever depth you want. And you'll see that you can actually get them an extra 10 to 12 feet of running depth based on going to a 50-pound braid versus a 50-pound mono.
And speed is the X factor to all that.
Yep. And the certified depth.
Don't worry. Hey, Andy, I was getting there, buddy.
The CD 25.
I was getting there.
Favorite color is chartreuse with an orange head.
Yeah.
That's the ticket right
The
there.
X-Wraps, I would say my second fallback would be for the X-Wraps. The thing with the X-Wraps is I'm real careful where I drop those.
Yeah, they're $30 a pop.
Because they're $30 a pop, and
the bombers are like 15.
They probably, out of all the trolling plugs, the high-speed trolling plugs that I've ran, they have the best action right out of the box without tweaking the plug at all with hooks or anything. But cost-wise, the man's stretch 25s do just the same.
Yeah.
You're going to lose plugs. You're going to hang plugs. The one thing I will say is a lot of the big grouper that you're going to catch in 20 to 30 feet of water are going to rock you up. We had fish rocking us up at 4 miles an hour. They were coming up, eating a plug, and getting in the rocks before we could drag them out. We're having to spin back around, come tight on the rod, and wiggle these bigger fish out of the rocks. You made a comment on one of my photos about how scraped up the fish was. That was a 5-minute fish. I knew that fish was on there. I mean, he hit it, and the rod was getting with it, and, I mean, it just stopped. And that's the other thing, too, with this trolling, especially under that 25-foot range. You've got to keep the boat moving.
Gear.
You have got to keep those fish coming your way. As soon as you stop, they go in the rocks, especially if you're in a good spot. And so it's a kind of an art to figuring out when to slow down and let them retrieve, and et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of these bigger grouper, over the keeper grouper, 25 inches plus, be careful because they will rock you up.
No
and
doubt.
If you keep going, or if you yank your plug and break your own line, you actually had a fish on there. So if you get back ahead of that edge where that fish went up to, a lot of times you can pull them out of there. So
trolling is one of those things that I think I just looked back to when I started doing it, and I'd hear all the success stories about trolling, and you'd and I imagine a lot of people that might be watching either have or probably will encounter this feeling of you get out there, you start doing it for like 30 minutes, you don't get a bite, and you're like, I'm going back to what I know. I'm going to go back to dropping bottom or going to do something else because it isn't the most exciting. But if you can hang through that and make a day of it, like don't go get bait, don't go get anything, just grab your plugs and go do that. The experience you're going to gain and how much that can equate to putting, keeper size grouper in the boat. I hands down in 2018 caught way more keeper size fish trolling, and a lot more fish to the boat anyways, than I did on live baits. I mean, it was a good year all around, but that fall and winter bite on the plugs was amazing.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things you've got to be committed to, and you've got to get out there and do it, and you've got to learn to recognize when you're scraping bottom, when it's a fish, when you're stuck, like all those little nuances of it. Learn how to read the
biggest
rod tip.
The biggest thing in Tampa Bay, especially in some of the areas that I like to troll, the biggest X factor, I can get away with the tide as long as it's screaming, but the surface grass is the worst. If you've got a lot of surface grass where you're trying to troll, just hang it up.
Yeah, I try to avoid it like the last part of an outgoing tide.
Yeah, and a lot of times what you can do is just remove yourself from that area for about an hour or so and come right back, and you control that area. But if you have a lot of surface grass, especially with these big lip trolling plugs, game over. You'll never get them to run right. And there was a comment made about not being able to get them to run right. The tide will affect that too. If you're running on a strong tide, it'll affect the way the plugs run for sure. And it also depends on which way the tide's running in correlation to which way you're running the plugs. Mm-hmm. And I'll choose different channels based on that. If I'm gonna go out there and troll when the tide's running, I'll actually try to go against the tide. I want the plugs because I'll grab the plug and send it down.
Yep.
If you're trolling with the tide, a lot of times you won't get the action because the tide's pushing the plug.
Away.
You'll actually have to go faster.
Yep.
So for me personally, if I'm gonna choose against or with, I'm gonna go against the tide most of the time, and it'll make the plug run a little bit better and dive a little bit deeper. So
no doubt.
Something to consider.
I hate trolling.
Is there anything you want to add to the
Rick caught a grouper
I
once.
told Andy I've caught a bunch of grouper. I just have never caught one trolling.
You definitely don't need to, but it's another method. Let me answer Dustin's question. We've been seeing temperatures generally to start the day in the low 80s. I would venture to guess that tomorrow it's going to be probably right around 80 in the morning. I got on my truck this morning, it was 67 was the air temp, and that's a big difference from 77, which it was about a week and a half ago. So about 80, and it's going up by about 4 or 5 degrees throughout the day. William Corbin, he and I mean, we both touched on it. We actually just use our tarpon rods, which are spinning gear, and that will work fine. If you wanted, what I would tell you is, even being affiliated with a tackle store that would love to sell you a high-end grouper trolling combo, I would say just go with like a Penn Senator ready-to-go combo. Something 6.5 feet or so. You're going to be out the door for $150, and you can use it for bottom fishing, everything else you want to do trolling, if that's more your speed. But, if you need a tarpon rod, we get it done on tarpon rods, and it's a good excuse to go buy one of those, and you have it all through the tarpon bite, and then you use it for grouper and any other big fish you want to tussle with throughout the year. So I would say, depending on what your additional use of that rod's going to be, make the decision that way. Tarpon capable outfit is going to run you a little bit more than a simple 4/0 Senator, Penn Senator with a trolling rod on it, So those are your options. But if you come into Tampa Fishing Outfitters, the whole staff, they're used to those questions. They can get you fixed up based on what your needs are for sure.
Rock and roll.
So with this cooler water, the one thing that I always start to kind of pay attention to is how's it going to affect that snapper bite, as it starts to cool off. You always wonder when they're going to start pushing away from where we've been getting them. So I'm not quite ready for that super cool weather to come in yet, just because I want to keep that going for a little while longer. That's just been too good to give up on right now.
I tell you, there's, when one thing leaves, there's always something else behind it, and so.
That's the good thing about our area.
It's the one thing about the estuary, and sometimes people don't really look at it like that, but that is the beauty of living in an estuary and fishing in an estuary, is that we've got fish that will move into our area to reside through the winter. The triple tail are starting to move back in. The cobias are going to start moving back in. I've already seen some cobias moving in on the flats. So there's always something to sort of transition into, especially, I've always kind of categorized our fishing as, the inshore stuff, which is kind of like inside the sandbar, right? So you got your redfish, your snook, your trout, you catch a flounder, sometimes you get a cobia. But then you bounce on the outside of the bar, and now we're talking mackerel, snapper, groupers, sharks, tarpon, cobias, etc. And so what's nice is that, we have the ability, especially moving into this winter time, where both of those are going to get good.
Yep.
So whether, and then we'll get to a point where it just starts to fizzle out. Normally into December, coming into January, it's just tough. It's icicles. And so, you're looking for more sheep's head, you're looking for some trout, et cetera. You're trying to find something that'll bite, right? Maybe you do some flounder fishing, but that fall transition is bar none one of my favorite times of the year to be fishing in Tampa Bay. When that water breaks that friggin' 75-degree mark, 70, and it starts sitting on 73, 72, just be ready to go fishing because everything fires off.
It's happy.
Everything fires off, and we see that swing each year. We see it in the spring, and we see it in the fall. When we spring up from 65 and roll through that 70, everything is just incredible. And then we come down from 85 into 75, 73, and it just fires off again. Yeah. So look for, Red October is in full effect.
100%.
Is in full effect, Andy. We got some video to prove it. But it's that time of year where you can really do a ton of different things in Tampa Bay because of that transition, because of things sort of just making their way into wintertime. Depending on what you want to catch. I know there's some late season tarpon around. There's some big snook moving in. We didn't get one to eat the other day, but we saw about, 10 or 12 40 pluses waiting in an area to move up into the river where they normally sit. So everything is playing out the way that it should. And I honestly think that this transition from fall into winter is going to be a really good one.
Yeah.
It
seems like it's right on schedule.
We haven't had any terribly bad storms moving in on us. Knock on wood. We got one sitting out there, Karen, that I don't think is going to cause us an issue. But provided we don't have any of these major storm systems, we're going to have an epic transition into fall and winter, man.
Water's starting to clear up a lot in my neck of the woods.
And that'll happen as that water temperature drops. That water's just going to start getting cleaner and cleaner.
Baits were super happy in that cool water this weekend all day long.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing is it's looking like it's going to be right on schedule if all holds true.
The next moon will be a good moon, and then November is normally when we start to see our cold fronts really start stacking up. Now, we say cold front. Rest of the country calls it cool front, but it makes a difference for our fishery, and so
whatever came through this weekend was a cold front.
Oh, it was nice in Georgia. It was real nice in Georgia.
Going back to the bibs this week. Put
boots
those back on.
To put on my
boots and
extra toughs.
Yeah, you got your boots, huh?
Waterproof boots on. Stay dry.
Yeah. What I'm not looking forward to is after fall and thinking about those cold mornings. Those are the worst.
Yeah,
where you gotta have gloves.
February, March mornings.
I tell you, I'm gonna plan on doing a lot more artificial stuff this year.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've built some clients that fish with me. They travel in through the holidays and kind of the beginning of the year. They plan some trips, and those folks I've already kind of talked to. And it's always a battle coming through January, and it's completely dependent on bait and how our weather systems are, of whether or not the fishing's going to be good or bad. And so I've already planned on doing several artificial trips this year out of the skiff, and just rock it that way to not have to stress about catching bait and doing the whole routine in the morning. It's not so much that you can't catch bait, it's what you got to go through to get it.
Yeah.
When we got to start going to the bridge or when those markers have got 3-footers on them, I'm going to be more than happy slinging arties on the inside of the sandbar while you guys are out there getting bait.
It's especially,
So
that's such a grind, but I was always reluctant to run artificial trips, and on a few of the trips that I had where there was 1 or 2 people at a time, we kind of incorporated that and saw success, and I think I'm going to kind of follow that plan with some of those trips that are smaller groups. Now, 3 or 4 people, slinging arties all over the place,
Be careful.
I don't want to be in the middle of it.
Well,
it depends on the angler, too.
It's tough too. I mean, and it's tough what you're
Yeah.
going to target or what you're going to do.
Yeah.
A lot of times, you can catch quite a few snook, but
Yeah.
in the wintertime, if you don't have live bait, sometimes snook fishing is
Yeah.
completely out of the game. You might catch one or two on a top water first thing, or
Yeah.
maybe if it warms up, in that middle part of the morning, you'll get a couple to fire off. But historically, in the areas we like to fish for snook, they're pretty much hunkered down,
Yeah.
trying to keep warm, and we sort of fire them off
They
to
want some sardines.
have a good time. But I'm looking forward to doing some red fishing, and it's a nice time, to go catch a good trophy gator trout.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily target them, but when you're fishing these shallow water flats, especially first thing in the morning, if you can get out there on some of those nice, pretty mornings, you'll catch those big gator trouts. You'll catch those big, even some big snook will still lay out there on those sandbars first thing in the morning. So,
No doubt.
looking forward to that.
It's nice. It's nice to get that change. I think we all start to feel it towards the end of the summer. Us and just any angler included. You start to get in that pattern where it's just like, okay, by 10 o'clock I'm going to be completely drenched in sweat. Sun's going to be beating down on us. Bite's going to slow down. Now we're going to get in that time also where you've got. I always liked it because I never had to wake up so early. That was before I started guiding. I always kind of like that. I'll sleep in until 7. I'm going to get on the water at 8:30. And I'm going to fish the core part of the day when I want to be up and active,
Right.
instead of working under that constraint of if I don't start fishing with lines in the water by 7:30, it's I'm going to be fishing in the middle of the day, slow bite.
Right.
It's going to start opening up. I mean, when you think back to the spring, like we had one of the most epic spring snook bites we ever had, and it was going off from sun up to sundown, all day long.
I run a lot of afternoon, evening trips that time of year. I thoroughly enjoy fishing from 4 to 7 o'clock.
Mhm.
There's something about those fish have been warmed up all day. Normally you'll get an outgoing tide, and those fish will be kind of happy. Things will start moving out. They've been sitting on the sandy areas, and they'll really fire off in the evening time. So that's, one of my favorite times to be out there. And we run a lot of afternoon trips, pick up 12, 1 o'clock. You go have breakfast, go get some shrimp, or go get some live bait if the weather's not, weather permitting, and run an afternoon trip. A lot of times, and we'll talk more about this in the wintertime, but that's generally when the fish fire off. That water has come up. A lot of times we'll have low tides first thing in the morning. Water comes in, warms up the sandbars, warms up the oyster bars, the seawalls, et cetera, et cetera. The fish move in, get comfortable, and normally they'll feed on that outgoing tide. So something to look forward to moving into winter.
Yep. But first, we get all this great red fishing for the next month.
It's funny. We was
good.
on the way up here. I was listening to Travis on the phone, and he was talking to a guy, and in the conversation, he said, this is one of our slow times of the year, and this is the time of year that we don't fish as much as we do in the spring. And it's such a shame. Because,
it is.
Yeah, it's
because
like the best time of the year.
If you want to go out and have just great fishing, I mean, you can go in the spring and you can catch 50 snook. Most of them are going to be,
the mediums.
to the boat in 10 seconds kind of thing. Right now is the time, just for good, hard pulling fishing.
Yeah.
And it's the time that we're all slow. It's the slowest for me. It's that's why I've been taking 8 and 10 days off at a time. I've been running up to Georgia and doing other things, and I'm changing some trips and moving them around. But I'm not really, this time of year I only fish about 6-7 trips a month.
Yeah.
So
And think about
this is when you should be fishing 20 trips a month or 25, in the springtime, 30.
some of your best results happen this time of year. And think about our last
And I'll get people on the boat 3 months from now going, hey, the redfish biting. I'm like, you slept through the redfish. I told you that the last 3 years come in October.
Yeah.
No, we don't do that.
Too hot. And if you think about it, our last 2 Octobers kind of got interrupted. We had 17, we had the hurricane.
We had Michael last year.
We had Michael last year, and we also had, that some of that red tide still lingering around in certain areas that was off-putting to a lot of people, so I don't think as many got to enjoy it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Let's just keep those finger crossed, knock on wood. Let's do what we got to do. I want to have an unscathed October.
And how many times in the springtime you tell people, well, when's the best time to catch redfish? September, October. Come back September, October. Oh, we'll do that.
You don't see them.
See you next spring for 50, 60 snook.
50, 60, 20-inch snook.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's great.
Oh, God.
For me, this is always the time when I travel. This is when I travel the most, fishing tournaments. The IFA Championship's always in October. Jason's out. I want to give a shout-out to Jason and Brian Visnevec and all the other guys that are out there from the Tampa Bay area. We wish you guys luck.
Represent, baby.
Represent, man. Y'all hope y'all do it.
That's the Redfish
World Series.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that's happening this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So good luck to all the teams from the Tampa Bay area. Hope you guys have a good trip up there and catch some good fish and represent us well. I know you will. So good luck to all you guys. We'll be following you, making sure you're staying on track, talking smack.
No doubt.
If you can catch redfish in Tampa Bay, you can catch them anywhere in the world.
You ain't lying, buddy.
I tell people that all the time.
I don't know. Last week it was some easy pickings for a little bit. Yeah.
If you can catch redfish in Tampa Bay, you can catch them anywhere in the world, man. I'm telling you.
No doubt. Yeah, day
if
in,
you
day
can
out.
find redfish in Tampa Bay, you can catch them anywhere in the world. I'll say that.
Maybe not. There's like a 6 or 8 week window we have that's not that difficult to find.
It's like, James and I had a conversation after the other day, and I said, I made a comment to him, and I said, after what we did the other day, I said, James, I said, this is why I became a fishing guide. What we did in the last 2 days is the main reason why I became a fishing guide. I look forward to doing this every single year. This is what put me over the edge to say, man, I want to show people this.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And
some people get that way with the tarpon.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about. I said, man, some people it's the snook, a big snook. Some people are trout guys. Some people are cobia guys. For me,
I'm with you.
It's
I'm with
redfish,
you.
and that comes from being a tournament angler. I tournament fished long before I became a fishing guide, and I became a fishing guide from tournament fishing. And so that scenario, I mean, I get in the zone, and it is, I mean, you've been there with it, Rick.
Yep.
It's a passion that I have of fishing redfish, and not just pulling up to a shoreline and slinging a cut bait under the trees. I'm talking about fishing redfish.
Yeah.
Finding a school redfish and working them.
Patterning.
It's the hunt.
Patterning the fish. Knowing when to be there.
Well, just like 2 weeks or Friday, this Friday will be 2 weeks ago when we did that. Y'all talked about it last week, that tournament out of, was it Getaway, Castaway, whatever over there. That was more fun as a captain in that hour and a half time that we were chasing
Working
those
those
redfish
fish
down and trying to. It was a chess game. That was a blast. I mean, and there was times we were going 20 minutes without making a cast, and then it was like
bang, bang, bang,
reel them up, let's go, and then finally there at the end they just kind of stopped. But that was fun,
and that's enjoyable when everybody plays the game right and fair, and nobody's got an attitude with somebody else and this and that.
If you get it, like if you understand what's going on around you, hey, we're going to be with some other boats doing it, you got to when you're in that, and we're talking about a popular area. We're talking about a fishery that I don't think is a big secret in Tampa Bay at all over there, and it gets a lot of pressure. But the fish are still cooperative, so I think if you curb your expectation to what that fishery is there and how you've got to fish it and how you've got to interact with the other boats around you, it can be fun.
Right.
There's going to be people who hate it, and for me, it really depends on who's on the boat with me. If I can say, hey, guys, this is what that fishing is going to kind of be like, this is what we're going to have to do to get ourselves, or this is potentially what we may need to do to get ourselves in the mix, and they're all for it, great. So I kind of usually work off who I've got on the boat. Well, I would say that's not for everybody.
The group
What's up, James? Thanks for watching, buddy.
The group that I had that day, they get on the boat, and I say, so are y'all local? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're from right here. I said, that's awesome. I said, do y'all fish much out here? Yeah, all the time. I said, well, where do you normally fish? Wheaton Island. I said, okay.
Perfect.
Oh, I said, well, you guys are probably going to show me things today. I'll learn from y'all. And
that answer is probably 80% of the people I ask if they do fish around here. I'm like, where do you fish?
But the guy says, no. No. He says, we're not going to teach you nothing. I said, well, you don't know. You don't know. I mean, this is 5 minutes into him being on my bus. You don't know what I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know nothing. He says, no, trust me, we fish all the time. We don't ever catch nothing except for trout. He says, we catch trout all the time. But I said, well, we'll see. And, we didn't. I mean, we had a good day as far as where we placed. I mean, we took second overall and third overall and second in the trout. But we only caught like 7 game fish all day.
Yeah.
That's tournament fishing.
And we spent 2 hours running down redfish.
That's the right ones.
But the guys were like, "Oh, this was one of the greatest fishing days I've ever had."
We got them hemmed up, and my group was just the opposite. I said, "Listen, and when you're fishing,
I didn't know what you were doing.
When you
we
fish
hooked our redfish, and I said, "Let's go, boys. We got to go
on
get
to the next."
Yes.
Well, and I told those folks when we kind of pulled in, and I had 4 pretty unexperienced anglers on the boat.
I didn't know you were staying until they all got a redfish. I'm like, Travis,
well, and that
maybe he don't know that it's a boat slam,
Yeah.
Well, and I tried to
here's
call
the deal,
you
though,
hey, it's a
and
boat
here's
slam.
the deal, and the way I approach a lot of those events. There's a lot of guys that are. So how do I put this? There's a lot of guys that are tournament driven from a guide's perspective on those tournaments.
Right.
Whatever my clients want to do is what they want to do. I'm very client driven when it comes to those. I don't put me wanting to chase down these 3 fish.
Trust me.
If they're not into it.
I get it. These guys, before we got out of the idle zone, they're like, well, let's go win this
right.
thing.
And that's a different mentality. And so we got out there, and I had told the folks, I said, listen, here's what we're going to do. I said, we're going to pull up here. I said, there's a school of redfish. I said, at some point, they're going to be in this area. I said, we're just going to follow the flow of what's going on. We weren't the first boat in, so I said that means
it was like a bunch of gypsies.
That means we follow the flow of what's going on. You know what I'm saying? And so the fish came down. The fish came down. You text me and said, "Here they come." We set ourselves up, and there was a couple different boats that the fish would never settle down because they were being pushed.
It was like a caravan of gypsies on those redfish.
Once they came through, and I saw 2
we
other
laid
boats,
them out. Everybody else left.
And so I got right in line. I said, well, all right, well, if this is how we're going to do it, then I'm going to put my clients in the same opportunity that your clients are. And so we started kind of pushing these fish, and we got them hemmed up. Well, once they got hemmed up, they got happy and just sort of.
It started as 12 boats, and it ended with 4 boats. And we were.
Well, we caught one. We finally got one. I missed. I mean, I'll take the blame. I missed one in when I first came by. I hooked a fish in the middle of school from the tower, and as soon as I set the hook, broke the line because I was in the middle of the pod.
And I know you hate. I hate.
I had nothing else.
But I hate doing redfish that way.
Right. I don't. I want them to have the experience of.
I'm talking about chasing them like that.
Oh, I don't like chasing them.
I don't like doing that.
I even made a comment when I was in the tower. I didn't have my trolling motor down, and I made a comment. I said, "Oh, we're gonna chase them."
Yeah.
So I got down. I got my trolling motor down, and we started.
On Saturday, I went to after I lost steering. I was like, I need to go diagnose this. And I was gonna go to a particular location, tied with that east wind, that shoreline. By the time I got up there, I was not going to do that with no steering because I was going to have to come in on plane if I need to do it. So I said, no, we're going to go back to the other side and go over there, and I'm going to figure out this steering issue, and I'm going to put down somewhere I can let them fish while I do that because I don't want to eat up their time. So we go and do that. I'm in a pothole. The water's high. It's pushed to the weed, to that side. And there's like nobody out there. And I know I don't like to fish them on high tide either, but I was like, we should be able to intercept one here. And but what's happening is as I'm fishing there, there's a guy and he's in his tower, and he's standing on his cushion just like you and I like to do, but he's on the big motor the whole time, steering with his foot, and just trying
to bump him,
and it's just doing circles around me, and I'm like, oh man, I was like, I get it. But at a certain point, all right, they're either not here or you're not. Well, something's going on here. For 30 minutes, I watched this guy just donut my boat on the big motor over and over. And it was windy. It was choppy. The water's up like 2.5 feet. I'm like, probably not going to see him.
Yeah, I got to see him.
So, but then sure enough, as it started dumping out, a couple pod showed up. I was out there on a really low tide last week when the wind was just straight out of the north towards the end of the outgoing tide, to the point where I was barely really able to even get the boat out of there, and we whacked him pretty good. saw them, we talked about when we're looking at redfish and how you've got really sharp eyes. I'll tell you that right now. And the
His
color,
wife's an optometrist.
yeah, and I joked with him. I said, "Your wife
the
must
glasses
be."
I'm wearing.
I said that too. I said, "Your wife must be an optometrist." But he's seeing color, and I'm way more. I can't see that crystal.
So I'm
color.
yelling at him, right? We're on a pot of redfish, and I'm like, James, in front of your boat, dude. I'm talking like, just open your bail.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't see him. I'm like,
Just
it,
cast.
it looks like floating sargassum grass, dude. I'm like, just throw it. And then he goes, well, I'm colorblind. And I was like,
I can't see
oh.
the
Yeah.
So I felt horrible after that, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I could still redfish and spot redfish, and really don't have a struggle with doing that. But that, when if I rely on other,
So would you be
things they're
better at
doing.
like bluefish?
No, really not.
You know what
over there? The whole time you're telling me that, though, the one time when I was on my boat and you were on your boat, I'm looking at the school. I'm looking right at him. I'm tracking him. I'm got him. And he's like, they're right there. I'm like, I know. And then he's like, no, over to your right. And I'm like, am I right? Over here. It gets me
Well,
off
I
track.
guarantee you'd have seen these that morning because it was low water.
Yeah.
And they were right up. I mean, when I first saw them, they were like right up on the bushes.
Yeah.
Oh, these things were
Really?
sherbet orange.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that. But I mean, it was just.
I need a lot of good sun to be able to see that. If there's
Yeah.
any kind of haze or overcast, that's when it's really like when the water
That's
gets
when you start
dark.
watching water.
When the water gets dark, I have a hard time seeing that red color in the water.
Then
or
you
that
have to
copper
read
color.
you actually have to read the
Read the
water.
weight.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what I rely on 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And even in the perfect conditions, until it gets to the winter, when you've got some different visuals behind those fish. But right now, with a lot of grass, to me, that like dark green of that grass or that color of that sand and that redfish behind it, I just can't see that color difference. So I rely a lot on optics, like the glasses you have there, the bronze from Smith.
these are the ambers. These have
The
been.
amber. Those are my favorite to wear.
I picked these up about 2 months ago. No, I guess it's about a month ago. I had a pair previous too, but I had my wife bring me a pair home. I was like, man, we're getting into that time of the year where I need to see in the water.
Yep.
It's very important to be able to see in the water. A lot of times with snook and some other these game fish, you don't need to see them quite like you do redfish. They don't move as fast. That's the other thing. You can spot a school of fish and go, there they are, and turn that trolling motor on, and when you look down to adjust something and look back up, they're gone.
Yep.
And if you can't pick up that faint little bit of color,
It's amazing.
it's game over.
How,
Those fish will be behind you, and you'll be heading that way, swearing that that's the way they went.
No
and
doubt.
so, optics. You're right. It's a very important part of the game. It was a very important part of the game when we were in Steinhatchee a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
They had some really, really stained water.
Well, let's talk about that then, about the optics. So you bring that up, when I have a pair that I specifically wear in those scenarios, and that's what you've got on. It's something non-mirrored for me. I don't like the mirror finish when it comes to like a sight fishing lens, and it's got to be copper, amber, and like I said, no mirror. Now every day on the water, I like the green mirror, whatever that everybody else does, because it gives the eyes a little bit less fatigue. But it's a big difference for me.
It depends on where you're looking.
Yeah.
That's what I've figured out over the years, and having a wife as an eye doctor. That's the way I kind of.
What is your wife an optometrist?
That's the way I've kind of noticed it, and so I have a lot of pairs of sunglasses with a lot of different lenses, and like you said, you've got your blue green, your blue and your green mirrors, right? I tend to use those more for tarpon season, more for, if I'm mackerel fishing or if I'm summertime fishing, and I'm not so much looking in the water, but I'm looking out. I'm looking out into the blue and the bright sky a majority of the time, or I'm looking on the surface of the water at a distance to see a mackerel jump or a mackerel blow up or something. I'm not as concerned with seeing in the water.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so when I transition into sight fishing, a lot of times I'm back into an amber set of lenses. What you got to consider is whatever the color of your lens is, that's what you're going to see better in, for lack of a better term. So the guys that are mahi dolphin fishing and tuna fishing and marlin fishing and all that, you're in the blue water. You're out in water that's blue. You need a pair of blue or green mirrored lenses. If you're fishing backcountry in Louisiana, or you're fishing
Muddy water,
the rivers, or areas that are going to be a little more tannic, a little more brown and brownish oranges, you're going to want that amber lens because that's what it's going to let you see through. That's what it's going to filter. That's the light it's filtering.
Yep.
So you'll notice a significant difference when you put on a pair of blues and a pair of ambers looking in the water on the flats.
And I'm going to make a Smith plug right now. I mean, I got a pair. None of us have like a affiliation any of these, but I'll tell you, with the Smith, for me, a big difference in the sight fishing for me. Like I go to those all winter long.
I got to tell that story. Go ahead.
We go so all winter long. As soon as the water starts to get clear and seeing fish becomes a priority. The nice thing about the Smith is that chroma pop, especially for somebody like me who I already have enough difficulty with contrast and color separation, especially reds and greens. That's like the number one thing that gets bunched together in a polarized lens. The chroma pop that they do, that's what extracts those two colors 100% apart. Whereas most polarization, you're going to get some colors that are going to naturally bleed together. So it's like their claim to fame is that right there. And I mean, red fishing, grass flats, reds, greens, there's nothing better than that. So I've got a fresh pair in a box that
These are the guide's choice, and these are probably one of my favorite frames that they have. What I like about these, and we sell a ton of these at the shop, or at the store in Apollo Beach, but they're super light.
So light.
Super, super light. And so a lot of times when I'm sight fishing, I am on it all day. I mean, you are focused in all day, and the last thing you want to do is get a headache from having a heavy frame or something where you're really trying to concentrate in the water. So these were the choice of mine. I actually have a pair of Costa ambers that I'll use, but I'm really drawn to these because they're lighter. And I spend a lot of time in the tower, a lot of time looking, staring in the water, focusing, and having something light on your face makes a big difference. Go ahead.
I got a pair of Ocean Waves from 25 years ago.
They're great glasses.
They're great glasses.
They are.
But they're heavier than these two phones together.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
heavy frame.
And that was back when polarized glasses first kind of hit the pow.
Yeah.
And I was in total amazement and went and got these, bought them over at Bill Jackson's because
nobody had them.
Nobody had them.
Yeah.
And
Ocean Waves became really popular.
They were so. I still have them. They're they've held up over time. Haven't used them in years, but I used to wear them a lot. But they're really, really heavy.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first went to a lighter pair from them. It was after I started guiding and we did one of these functions where you got a pair of glasses, and I wore them. I'm like, wow, what a difference!
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not feeling as fatigued today after wearing these, and and I'm sure Ocean Wave makes nice light glasses now, but this was.
And it makes a lot of difference, especially on your temples.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's the worst.
Yeah,
that's the worst. Andy made a comment. I wanted to talk about that real quick because it was pretty funny. So was it last year, Andy, or was it the year before? Has it been 1 or 2 years? I don't remember, but anyway, got with Andy, good follower of the show, called me up, wanted to go do some red fishing. So we went out, we ventured out on the skiff together, just he and I, and I told him, I said, listen, if we're going red fishing.
It was last year.
It may have been last year.
Well, it
was
a
skiff.
Before.
That's right, 'cause I had the skiff.
You didn't have the skiff.
I had the skiff. So it was just when I got the skiff running. And I took Andy out, and I said, Andy, there's 2 things we're going to do today. We're going to throw artificials, and we're going to use pinfish. And he was kind of like, huh? So we netted up, I don't know, what do you say, Andy, about 3 or 4 dozen pinfish, and had jigs on. And we set out to go find redfish, specifically. So first thing in the morning, we went out, and the tide was up, so we fished some bushes with the pinfish. So we caught a few redfish. And I said, listen, man, I've got an area where there's a school. I said, but we're going to have to spend a little time. And I said, when we find them, it's game on. I said, but it's a needle in a haystack. I said, I've got to find them. So we made a couple passes in an area, and I didn't find them, and kind of just cruising along. We'd already caught some fish, so that was the icebreaker. And so Andy says, well, I'm going to go ahead and eat lunch. So I'm in the tower, and he's sitting on the console down in front of the tower there. And he busts open, I want to say it was like what was it, Andy? Like a 3-year-old's Lunchable. It's got the crackers and stuff in it.
So lunch of choice.
So Andy is tearing it up, man. He's making his little thing down there. He's got his cracker, and he puts his cheese and his ham on there, and he's just having
ham and cheddar, baby.
Oh, he's getting with it, dude. And I come around the corner, man, and I look over, and there is one sand hole it's probably the size of our little area right here. And if it ain't got 400 redfish in it, I'd kiss your butt. And they are sitting there. I'm on the trolling motor, and I look over, and I thought it was grass.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, it lifted up real slow and just started swimming, right? And I couldn't even talk. Andy. He's like, so he jumps up. Lunchable goes everywhere. The crackers go one side, the cheese and everything goes the other side. He gets up, grabs a jig, stands up, man. And like I said, if there ain't 300 or 400 redfish sitting, I'm talking from here to those rods away from the boat. And he goes, where are they at? I'm like, Andy, they're right beside the boat. And about that time, we made some commotion. And, we talked about it the other day about how they'll fire up and turn colors.
Yeah.
They went from white to bright red in about 3 seconds. And, I mean, it was a cartoon. His eyeballs got about that big.
Wow.
And all he did was open his bail and flip it out there, man, and we doubled up. Boom, boom. And we caught, I don't know, Andy, what did we catch? Four or five of them out of the school before we lost the school. But kind of point to that story is, you can be sitting right beside these fish.
Oh, yeah.
And you can just not look in the right direction or miss them by a hair and really just
zoom on by.
Yeah, not. It's
no worse for wear.
From hero to zero, and it happens to us all the time. I've had clients where I'm like, I know there's a school of fish here.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't find them right now. And you get that magic moment when they appear and you find them. If you can stay with them and pattern those fish, man, now is the time of year where you can rock them.
A month ago, I'm fishing these guys, and I pull up. I said, I know there's a school of redfish when we're going. So we pull up, come off plane, and shut the motor off. I go up and get on the trolling motor. I turn the trolling motor, and I turn, and 50 yards.
There they are.
There they are. I said, that's them. Well, when I turned, I got a little hull slap. They're gone. And it was, the water was all looked like stained iced tea or something. So now I'm looking. I'm like you. I'm watching the water now. I'm trying to read the water. I'm not looking for fish. I'm trying to read the water. And I'm looking out like this. I'm on trolling motor. I'm trying to get the boat back in position. I'm like, man, they're gonna show
9 times out of 10 they pop up right beside you.
And I had two teenagers on the boat. Well, one was a teenager, one was almost a teenager, and he's standing up here by me, and he goes, well, what are these fish right here? And I looked over, and he's pointing down. There's I'm looking past everything, and there was redfish going.
Ding, ding, ding.
I said, that's what we're looking for.
Right there. We just ran them over.
That's cool about it.
Good stuff, man. Well, the good thing is if you haven't got out and you want to get out, most of us here have got days available coming through the rest of what I would consider redfish season. So if you are looking to get out and do some red fishing, whether it's 1 guy, 2 guys, 4 guys,
you got the money.
Give us a call. My cell phone number is 813-830-3474. That's Captain Travis with fishbyinstinct.com.
Captain James with Local Knowledge Fishing, and my phone number is 813-625-2067.
And Rick, we know you got a cell phone, so
it's real simple.
601-2900.
813-601-2900.
What we need is 8 guys to get together, put 2 on the boat. We'll get Jason. We'll have a little tournament.
There we go.
There you go. We need 8. We need 8 faithful followers. We'll put 2 on a boat, and we'll have a little TFO tournament. It's only open to 8 people. The first 8 people to give us a call and book a charter, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll plan one day, and we'll even put a prize pack together.
Yeah.
How about that?
Put a prize pack together.
Hey, it's an idea. Maybe we'll follow up with it.
Give
us a call if you want to do some fishing. Guys, we appreciate it. Until next week, tight lines. We'll be back, same place, same time, next week. See you guys. Thank you.